We welcome you in, LSU fans. A happy Wednesday to you, wherever you're watching or listening this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button over on the YouTube channel. Check us out on all those podcast platforms. This is the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon, alongside Glen West. And Glen, it's here. I think every single year you roll into LSU season and you've got big games, you got marquee matchups, but everyone seems to have this one circled on the calendar each and every single season. It is Alabama week, the Crimson Tide getting ready to make the trek down to Baton Rouge. And so, Glenn, let's start off with this. I mean, it's so much importance. This is a playoff game. Kind of give me your thoughts on the magnitude of this game and what it means ultimately for LSU and Alabama a little bit as they get ready to face off on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, this is always one of those games that you kind of circle at the beginning of the year and it's always in that first, second week in November, always around this November 9th, 6th, 3rd
Mhm.
kind of range to kind of kick off November as one of the premier matchups really of all, the entire college football season. I mean, it seems like every year these two teams are playing for something. Last year, certainly LSU and Bama were fighting for their kind of postseason lives last year at this time. And that was the case 2 years ago when LSU was trying to make that push for the SEC championship game. And that's no different this year. I mean, these are two top 15 teams. You just saw the college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, and LSU's right there at 15, and Alabama, I believe, is at number 11. So winner of this game, I would imagine, has their foot pretty firmly implanted in that top 12 going into next week. So you just talk about it right there. I mean, that's just a huge moment in the season for both of these teams. We'll obviously dive into more of the game stuff here in a few minutes, but just from a kind of macro level, I think this is just it's as important as ever. In terms of just kind of the stakes of this game and what's on the line for both of these programs. And just talking with the players on Tuesday, you got that feeling. Nussmeier and Greg Penn, Savion Jones, all these guys talked about this rivalry and just how they grew up watching this game. Greg Penn grew up in Maryland, Savion from Louisiana. Nussmeier was moving all over. Was at one point an Alabama guy because his dad was the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator at Alabama for a couple of years there. And they all talked about watching this game and watching LSU Alabama every year as one of the pinnacle matchups of the season. So you got College Game Day coming in here. You got hosts of five-star football and basketball recruits coming in. LSU's certainly going to pull out all the stops from a recruiting perspective, and I think this is going to be another great atmosphere, one that'll rival Ole Miss from a couple of weeks ago, and should be a really fun matchup to kind of dive into.
Yeah, two things before we really dive into the game. One, it'll be the 2-year anniversary of my wife and I's first ever trip down to Baton Rouge. Remember, Glenn, when we made the trip down here in 2022, and safe to say that game was pretty crazy.
That was a
By
good
the way,
one.
that was
That was
that
a
was
pretty good one.
pretty good one.
Y'all make that? Did y'all actually go to that game? Y'all
We
actually were
didn't
able
go
to
to
go to
the
that
we
game?
didn't go to the game, but
Okay.
we hung out around campus during the game, and
Yeah.
it's pretty cool full circle to now
Yeah.
obviously be here. Going to be in the building for this one. It's going to be a great atmosphere. And then two, I got to get your thoughts on this because this might be one of the biggest storylines we're not talking about. What do you think the reception for Nick Saban will be? What's your take? What as he takes the stage on College Game Day on LSU's campus?
I would think it's met with, pretty consistent cheers. I mean, there'll be some boos in there as well, I would imagine. But I think look, a lot of time has passed here, and LSU's gotten to Nick Saban in Alabama a couple times in the last 5 years, and I think the kind of the sting of what of him moving from LSU to Miami, and then of course, going to Bama a couple of years after his short stint in the NFL, I think a little bit of that has worn off. At least that's just kind of my overview here. I mean, just interacting with guys on our Go 24/7 board, I think they understand what Nick Saban did for this program and
Yeah.
and what kind of just kind of putting them on the map. And so he's done a great job too. I mean, with the College Game Day stuff, I think he's been a really welcome addition to that crew. And yeah, I mean, I think there'll probably be some good natured ribbing in there. I think he's also been pretty pro LSU this year when they have talked about him. So yeah, I think this is going to be I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as to say a warm welcome for Nick Saban, but maybe a lukewarm welcome.
Yeah.
I think he'll be pretty well respected by the folks in Baton Rouge, and I'm interested to see kind of what the reaction though is to him being back on campus here.
Now, if he picks LSU, that place will go nuts on Saturday, which will be even more. Which will even
I wouldn't put money down on that. I wouldn't put money on that one.
I
But
don't know how if he was in Tuscaloosa and he picked LSU, it'd be even crazier. But
yeah,
well, obviously it'll be fun, college game day on campus, and Brian Kelly talked a little bit about that, just what this means from an exposure standpoint. But Glenn, we get down to the nitty gritty of this football game. Look, I've got my reservations about some certain things, about LSU. I'm trying to maybe work through those as we get closer to a prediction on Friday. But kind of wanted to get maybe your thoughts. Let's start off on the offensive side of the football. You obviously talked to Garrett Nussmeier last night. Look, this is a kid that he's so well coached in the media of how to talk and the right things to say. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. Where some players you get to see the raw, untapped emotion. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Sage Ryan, talking about targeting. That was a fun time a couple weeks ago. But you know, what's your thoughts on maybe the in between the years, the mental where these guys are at offensively on the mental side of things? Because it's real. Like last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago in College Station, nightmare scenario for the offense. You just couldn't do a lot of things. Obviously, we talk a lot about the defense, but what was your takeaway from just Garrett Nussmeier and the conversations and what the feeling is like in that offensive meeting room?
yeah, I don't think that they've lost any confidence or anything like that. I do think that you hope that the A&M game was a wake up call for Nuss. And look, the turnovers have been an issue, right? I mean, 8 turnovers, 7 interceptions in 3 of the last 4 games. That's just not a trend that I think you can continue here over the next 4 weeks and expect to get through it unblemished. So
Yeah.
he's got to get that under control. I think he understands that. We asked him about it yesterday, and he talked about it. He kind of danced around it a little bit. You mentioned the media coaching there. That's certainly the media side of him, but he, understands that he can't keep making these mistakes. And I think that was kind of the core of what he was really getting at. He said he learned a lot of lessons from that A&M game that he'll be able to carry on with him throughout the rest of his career. So you hope that he can kind of put that behind him and flush it and move forward and not have that be an issue. But the fact of the matter is it has been an issue here in 2 of the last 3 SEC games. And you kind of barely escaped from Ole Miss there. It took a pretty wild fourth quarter comeback and Nussmeier playing at his peak for them to get back into that game and ultimately win it in overtime. You had the Arkansas game there where there were no turnovers and you were pretty clean and you were able to put up 34 points on offense and move the ball pretty efficiently, find some balance in the run game. When this offense has played well, it's been when they've found some balance with their run game and with their pass. I mean, South Carolina game was not a pretty game, I don't think, for most of that game, but I think what they were able to do is they were able to move the ball in between the 20s and get themselves into scoring position pretty consistently. And, by game's end, they were able to punch those in for touchdowns. So you look at that game, there was some good balance with Caden Durham in the run. Arkansas certainly had those big runs from Caden Durham, going over 100 yards in that game. So yeah, I think when this offense is cooking and when it's operating at an efficient level, it's been when both the run and the pass are kind of working off one another well. And just one little stat that I did find today, just kind of scrolling through Twitter, and there was this graph that was put up in terms of run efficiency with teams, and it was a little surprising to me that it was kind of balancing the inside zone versus the outside run games, running in between the tackles as opposed to running outside of the tackles. LSU actually has run better inside the tackles this year than outside, and they've averaged close to 5 yards a carry according to this one graph that I was able to find, that kind of breaks down all the teams and kind of where they're at, and they're only averaging around just under 4 yards a carry on the outside. So, I know the inside run game has been, and then kind of the predictable play calling at times in the run has been something that has been something that's brought up a lot, but I do think that LSU will, continue to pound the inside run. They'll try to, continue to open up some of those running lanes for Durham and for Josh Williams. Hopefully, maybe we get to see some Caleb Jackson touches as well. But it's really going to start, I think, offensively for LSU in this game with, being able to find some balance against the run, because
Mhm.
Bama has not traditionally been a very good run defense this year. I think in SEC play, they're allowing around 155 yards on the ground per game. They're allowing 240 through the air. So actually, this is a Bama defense in SEC play that's given up close to 400 yards a game. So this is a defense that I think you can exploit and take advantage of if you're on your game. But it's going to have to start with Nussmeier and those guys, eliminating the turnovers, limiting the penalties, not getting behind the chains, and just continuing to move the ball forward and getting positive yards. It's okay if you have to throw the ball away a couple times in this game. Alabama is very aggressive on defense. I think they're
Mhm.
top 5, top 6 in the country in turnovers, takeaways. They have 11 interceptions, I believe 7 or 8 fumble recoveries. So you've got to be careful with the football, and that's certainly going to be a big key for me. But certainly, you can maybe expand on this a little bit. Just like the run game to me, I think is going to be where LSU kind of has to find some answers this weekend, and hopefully they've spent the last couple of weeks trying to figure out what the best way that they can go about doing that.
Yeah, and obviously, without Garrett Dellinger there, the guard position is going to hurt them. Paul Mabinga, who I think can be a great talent for this group, just a lot to ask. I mean, it's just a lot to ask, especially with a DJ Chester. That's kind of, to me. I mean, he hasn't been bad by any stretch. I mean, he just hasn't been as consistent as what you had last year
I
in
think
terms of
they've been
that.
penalty prone. I mean,
Yeah,
they've given, when you have guys that draw a lot of penalties, you're going to immediately go to like, okay, that guy's not playing well because he's getting all these penalties. But
yeah.
I do think that they have room to improve in the run blocking game, and I think it's going to be a total team effort though to get that thing on the right track. But, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there though.
No, but you're exactly right. I mean, it's not that they're playing bad. The pre-snap penalties are killing them, and
Yeah,
I think maybe that is that due to DJ Chester's inexperience. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. I mean, look, Alabama's front seven, which I think is their strength of their team. The back end has played better. I just talking with people, but it feels like front seven wise, they're going to circle that. Like they're going to circle that guard center combination. So we have to attack that. It's two young guys playing. Look, we know what you got on the edges. We know what you got at the other guard spot, but we've got to go get, after Mavinga and Chester, and we've got to exploit that. And I'll go as far as to say this, Glenn. I mean, LSU has to give Alabama something to think about in the run game where they're not winning this game. I mean,
yeah,
if it's so one dimensional where Nussmeier has to throw 50 passes
yeah,
and it's not out of we had to play in overtime, but it's more out of we couldn't run the football and we had to abandon it, just don't see a clear path to a win for
yeah.
for LSU in
I
that
don't either.
scenario. Is it that cut and dry to you? Like LSU, I mean, we'll talk defensively here in a second, but offensively, like we know at this point of the season, who your receiving core is. You get CJ Daniels back, I think that's a big boom for you. I mean, just having a guy who's a really good possession receiver. But we know what that is. We know that's their bread and butter. Everybody knows that. LSU knows that. Bama knows that. But if you can't have a respectable run game, I don't even know how much it's worth to keep talking about the offense because I just think it's that important to be that balanced against a good team like Bama.
Yeah, look, I mean, at some point you are who you are, right? And this team has not proven consistently that it can be, or this offense has not proven consistently that it can be a group that can complement the run with the pass. And
Yeah.
look, I think you're on to something there. I don't think that if Alabama is able to shut the run game down and LSU has no pulse, it's going to be very hard to win that game, because I do think that Nussmeier is going to put the ball in harm's way a couple of times if he has to throw the ball 50 times. If he has to throw the
Mhm.
ball between 30 and 35 times, I think he can be a little bit more cautious and a little bit more just kind of I'm trying to think of the word here, but just he can be a little bit more careful, I guess, with the ball in his hands, as opposed to if he's being asked to throw it on 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. Like, I mean, like if you can't punch forward for a couple of yards on 3rd down and continue to move the chains to the run game, get yourself up into 2nd and 3rd and short situations because of the run. It just
Mhm.
puts a ton of pressure on Nussmeier. It puts a ton of pressure on these weapons to consistently get open. And, look, I think probably one guy in this offense that I think LSU could use and kind of have a big game is Mason Taylor. I mean,
Yeah.
he's every time he makes a play, it's a big play. Like it's going for a
Yeah.
first down, or it's going for a big chunk yard or a touchdown kind of play. Um, But in 3 of the last 4 games, he's only had 3 catches. Like, I mean, I think he's a guy that if you're LSU, you want to get the ball down to, 6, 7, 8 times a game, have him turn upfield and try to get some big yards after the catch in some clutch situations. So I would love to see Mason Taylor get 6, 7, 8 balls thrown his way in this game, and kind of be a good safety valve for Nuss. I think that was something that we talked with Mason a little bit about on Tuesday, and just kind of how he's been able to have the impact he has had in this offense. It's been when Nussmeier he's not always the first read, and he's able to kind of duck underneath the defense, find the little soft spot, and Nuss is able to find him and off to the races from there. So I think that it's going to be extremely important for this offense to find some consistency with the run. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know kind of what answers maybe they've been able to find these last couple weeks, especially with not having Dellinger in there. But they absolutely have to be able to run the ball in this game if they want to have a chance.
Flip it over to the defensive side of the football, Glenn. I'm just going to let you know my big concern here. I went back and watched the South Carolina game, and look, did we lose you?
Sorry, I'm good.
You're good. You're good. All right, I'll start that over. But it's good. It was a good point to do that because it was switching topics.
Yeah.
So Glenn, I'm going to switch it over to the defensive side of the football here, and it's something that I went back and watched the pieces of the South Carolina game. And look, teams are allowed to improve and evolve over the course of a season. I don't want to say that LSU's the same team that they were in September. And went back and watched Marcel Reed and what he did to this defense. Glenn, I think my biggest concern just starts here. It's outside contain of Jalen Milroe on the designed runs. Alabama likes a lot of pre-snap motion. Savion Jones was talking about that yesterday. Greg Penn talked about that. Like, that's a little bit different than what they did last year under Tommy Rees and previous regime. But if Alabama decides to run Milroe more, which feels like, in talking with some Alabama folks, like they probably do need to do that in this game, you have to have outside contain. You have to stay in your lanes and play gap assignment sound football. And then the other piece to it is the defensive ends rushing past the quarterback. That has been something that has killed LSU when you look at big explosive plays by the quarterback in the run game, because when things do break down, a quarterback can step up in the pocket. Well, now a defensive ends rush past him and he can take a play and make it to where, hey, it was probably going to be a check down potentially or an incomplete pass. Now it's a 7-8 yard pickup at the very least. And Jackson Dart had success with that a little bit on some of the quarterback draw plays. I want to know what's your level of concern in terms of Milroe running the ball on designed plays. This is kind of specific. Designed plays versus when it breaks down, because everyone knows what he can do when it's backyard football. How concerned are you with if they really do say, which they haven't done a ton of it to the extent that they did in previous years, if they say, hey, we're going to run Milroe right, Milroe left, what's your concern level of LSU being able to stop that? I know maybe it's just a bad taste in the mouths of LSU fans and the media having watched what Marcel Reed did, but I do think there's something to that LSU hasn't been necessarily sound all the time when quarterbacks can run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. I mean, Brian Kelly said it for a reason after that game against A&M, that if he was an opposing coach, he would be planning for lots of read option plays with his quarterback. And so I fully expect that to be a centerpiece of what Alabama tries to do early in this game. And you mentioned there a couple of the guys that are going to be really important in that effort, and not and kind of trying to contain Milroe in the pocket and not allow him to kind of get free on some of those design runs. But I think for me, like I trust Blake Baker. I trust this defensive staff. Like, they put a great game plan together for Connor Wegman. They put a great game plan together for Taylon Green 2 weeks ago. Like, they've proven over the course of the season that they've learned this personnel, they've learned these players, they've learned how they can have some success, and they've been able to scheme up some pretty interesting, diverse game plans for the starter. Now, look, they got their hands tied behind their back with the quarterback switch against A&M. Everybody looked like a fool in that experiment or in that experience in the second half. There's no excusing how unprepared LSU looked in that respect. But I do think preparing for Milroe, preparing for this as starter, they'll have some interesting ways that they can go after him. I think it's going to be really important to me that Whit Weeks and Greg Penn have really solid games. Like I
Yep.
know we want to talk about the defensive ends, not rushing past the quarterback and containing him and all that stuff. To me, those are the two guys that I look at on this front seven that are going to have to be the ones chasing Milroe down and making it a 4 or 5 yard gain as opposed to a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 yard
Mm-hmm.
gain. Like that is going to be a huge point of emphasis, I think, in this game. And does LSU use a spy? Do they want Whit Weeks, kind of patrolling the field for Milroe and always looking for him? I don't know that they're going to go that far. I think they might try that. They might, kind of mix some coverages up a little bit. I'll be interested to see kind of what the prowler package looks like for Milroe. Kind of are they going to do that thing where they have the 3 or 4 guys standing right behind one another, just to kind of confuse them a little bit every once in a while? Like, I think this is why you hire Blake Baker. You hire Blake Baker to put together some creative blitzes and see if they can't, kind of rattle a quarterback here who, is a really good runner, but has also kind of struggled against the pass at times. Has struggled with the pass at times. This is a guy in Milroe who's a pretty good deep ball thrower, but he's not somebody that I think has been the most accurate when they're asking him to, throw the ball short and intermediate. He's not been, all that accurate in that respect, just in terms of what I've read and what I've seen, what I've watched. But, they've got to, it's a twofold game plan for me. It's eliminating the run or eliminating the threat of Milroe as a runner. And then in the back half of the defense, those guys, Zy Alexander and Ashton Stantz, being able to hold up against Ryan Williams, who's one of the most electric receivers in all of college football already as a freshman. So,
and he's only 17, Glenn. I don't know if
yeah, I mean, the dude is going to be insane in 2 years in that kind of program and that weight training. He's going to be an absolute monster. So, it's going to be really important for LSU to have a good game plan for him. Force Milroe to be a passer, I think, in this game is the best way they can have some success. Now, when Milroe is on and when he's throwing the ball well, he's just very tough to stop. And I think, LSU kind of has to hope for a game here where, he is a little bit more inaccurate with the football, maybe turns the ball over once or twice. I mean, he has thrown, I think, 6 or 7 interceptions this year as well. So he's somebody that can turn the ball over. But look, this is going to ultimately come down to how LSU's front seven is able to take away the run or not take away the run. Like this is going to be a huge storyline to follow because I do think that Alabama is going to test them early and often in that respect.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you there. I think it's going to be it's just become, we hear the same thing every week. It's DYJ. Do your job. Don't try to play outside of yourself, because if you do, you're going to get beat, and you're going to be beat bad.
Who are the guys up front that you think have to play well? Like I know Braden Swinson, Savion Jones, those guys are a given. I'm kind of looking at guys like JVR Suggs and Gio Paez, guys that can kind of eat up some space to where Milroe maybe doesn't have some of those running lanes, kind of break away. I mean, just what are your thoughts on that? Because I think the linebackers are going to be really key in this game, but I'm curious if there's another group or a couple of players that you feel like are going to be really important to kind of watch in this one.
Yeah, so I think Gio Paez is huge. I mean, we've seen him. He's not a massive disruptor. He's more of a guy that can really stalwart offensive lineman. And so when you talk about when Milroe steps up, Paez can't get moved off his spot, if that makes sense. Like, he's got to be a guy. Suggs has to be a guy. Shand, I mean, is going to, I think, offer some athleticism in the middle too that's going to help them combat that, and even Ahmad Bro to a certain extent. I mean, so I like that. And then Glenn, another name, and I'm going to put this in with the linebackers because I think this is the type of game where a guy like Major Burns needs to be a factor. And I know Major Burns has been we've talked about it so much. He's been his name's popping up everywhere on social media and different platforms and stuff like that, good and bad, about what he's been at LSU. But this feels like a game where if you can bring him closer to the line of scrimmage, it's another weapon that can be used to slow down Milroe. Now, like I said, I don't think Alabama's going to sell out and just run the ball 50 times this game. I'm not saying that wouldn't work. I think they'd be more inclined to do that. But like you said, and I mean, look, I had family in town that are Georgia fans, and they watched the first half of that Georgia-Alabama game. And when Milroe's on, I'm going to be careful how I say this because LSU fans might not like this. When Milroe's on, I don't think this is fair. When he's on probably the most unguardable player in college football. Now,
Yeah,
Travis Hunter's definitely in that conversation as well. But when you're talking about a guy that, with his athleticism, when he's in a rhythm passing the ball,
it's hard.
this
It's
offense
hard to
is
it's hard to beat.
very
Yeah,
hard to stop.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's a big piece. Any final thoughts on the defense? Because I do want to.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
because I do think that the other angle to this that we kind of just glossed over a little bit was his improvisational skills from a running perspective. Like, yeah, that's why I think LSU might want to have a spy at times on him and have Weeks kind of follow him around, because when he
sure,
does drop back to pass and when things maybe aren't open down the field, or if he's not trusting his arm early in the game, and is having some success with his legs, you're going to want somebody there in passing situations to, limit his ability to get down the field with his legs. I mean, like he's somebody that, he just reminds me so much of guys like Jalen Hurts and guys that, can kind of step back, patrol a little bit, is able to escape from a defensive lineman, and then just kind of almost like jog at times. It looks like he's almost jogging at times down the field because he's so fast that he's just waiting for things to open up in front of him. So like
yeah,
that kind of thing, don't let him be comfortable running the ball. And I think
yeah,
that that's going to be extremely important when he drops back into pass. That LSU has a game plan for him if he wants to get out of that situation and try to use his legs. It's going to be hard to scheme for. Like those improv quarterbacks are just really tough, especially when they're throwing the ball well. But if he's not throwing the ball well, or if he's not trusting his arm, maybe like he should, or maybe like Alabama fans would want him to, then that's got to be a way that LSU kind of helps get this thing off the field and kind of behind the chains instead of always moving forward.
I want to touch on one more thing before we move our predictions. And Glenn, I don't know if we've touched on this at all in our pregame podcast and our preview podcast. LSU has to be perfect in the special teams category to win this game. And I want to get your thoughts on, do you think any type of changes will be made? I guarantee you there was some probably come to Jesus type of meetings about, this can't keep happening. The snapping has not been good. I equated it 2 weeks ago to, it felt like a boiling pot. We had seen glimpses and it boiled over in College Station. How important is it for this to be just clean and something that we don't have to talk about in the post game other than, hey, they did a good job?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you look at the A&M game, and that was obviously the blimp on the schedule there. That's the blimp on the record, and when you have a game like that, I think everybody has to go back to the drawing board because of how little special teams is used on the field. I mean, look, Ramos is on the field for what, 5 plays a game if he's lucky, like for
Yeah.
kicks
Yeah.
and between field goals and extra points and whatnot. He's when they're out there, they got to make the most of those opportunities, and they certainly did not do that against A&M. And it's just so crazy because the week before against Arkansas, like Ramos in that field goal game was a huge reason you won that game. Like there's just been it was a real like just Jekyll and Hyde kind of 2 weeks there for that unit. And so
Mhm.
I to kind of answer your question directly, I don't think there's going to be a ton of changes in the field goal. Like I think Peyton Todd is going to continue to be the holder. The long snapper is not going to change. Roy is not going to, be moved from the long snapper position. And Ramos is going to continue to be the kicker. Like those guys just have to go back to work and work on whatever kind of kinks there were. I think having the crowd behind you, in this game, and not having like the rowdy fans kind of like just screaming at you right on top of you, I think that'll help. Just kind of with the communication and hopefully the snap and whatnot. But it's absolutely something that they have to get right. Like, I mean, if this is a problem again, then I could see there being some changes made pretty swiftly here. Like Brian Kelly was pretty adamant after that A&M game that this is not going to happen again. Like, and if it does, like you could tell by the tone of his voice that there's going to be some mixing up, some changes that are going to have to be made. So, and in the same breath, he also said that like they don't have an overabundance of guys that are long snappers or that are holders. You can't just go,
Mhm.
sign somebody from, off the practice squad from another team or something. Like they got who they got, and this is a college football, you're not going to carry like 3 long snappers or anything like
Yeah.
that. So you kind of have who you have here. So I don't see any changes this weekend. If it continues to be a problem, then then absolutely LSU should continue to explore other options. But I don't think that they're going to make any kind of changes this weekend in the field goal game. In regards to like punting has been a little bit up and down the last couple of weeks. I think Todd has hit some good punts, some bad punts, and I think that was kind of the expectation coming into this year. I don't think we expected a whole ton from the punting unit this year. I think Todd has been the one that separated himself. We don't see Oschendorf very much at all anymore, and it's been pretty much Peyton Todd getting the majority of the punts. But and in the return game, we haven't seen Savion Jones or Xavier Thomas really return a whole bunch of punts here recently. I mean, I think he's
Yeah.
got that in his game, but certainly I think LSU would like to see him flip the field or get them some better field advantage in this game once or twice. But as long as special teams isn't beating you, like isn't costing you games, then I'm okay. Like I think that you got to take advantage of the opportunities when the field goals arise. But outside of that, just play sound football. Don't have those fumbled snaps, those miscommunications, all that stuff needs to be left, out, left in College Station. They can't bring that back here over the next couple weeks.
Agreed. All right, prediction time. Let's rock and roll, Glenn. I want to leave LSU fans with a good taste in their mouth, so I'm going to let you go last. I'm going to go first. I'll just break it. I'm going Alabama to win this one. I'm taking Alabama and the points. I just don't necessarily. I agree with your statement of trusting Blake Baker, and I do. I don't know. I'm concerned. Maybe it's just recency bias, and I'd like to be wrong. I think Alabama does win this one. I'm going to go 33-24. Alabama wins this one. Maybe a late score to kind of make it a 2-possession game. That would make it a 9-point win. But it wouldn't surprise me if LSU won this game. But I'm just leaning the Crimson Tide here on Wednesday.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of wavering too as we even talk about this game and kind of break it down. Like I thought I would come in here thinking that LSU could kind of maybe get it done, but I think I'm kind of in that boat too. Like there's so many things that kind of crept up in that A&M game, and whether it's the run on offense, the turnovers on offense, like how much of the issues are easy fixes in 2 weeks against a team that you're going to be going against that is also playing for its playoff lives and has got a lot of talent. Like, I mean, this is an Alabama team that, yes, has 2 losses, but it's still a really talented team. Like, they have some talented guys on both sides of the ball. And so, the players even talked about it. There's lots of NFL talent on both teams, and scouts are going to be watching. So they want to put their best foot forward. I have real reservations about this run game. I don't feel good about LSU being able to kind of control their line of scrimmage on offense in terms of the run. I think they'll be fine in the pass. I think they'll move the ball down the field sometimes. But I do think Bama will also get off the field quite a bit if they can't find ways to run the ball. So that's going to be a one thing for me. Certainly the turnovers, you got to, if the turnovers are eliminated, then I think LSU really has a good chance in this game. But again, it's been 7-8 in the last 3 games, or 3 of the last 4 games. So it's been a nasty trend here that they just haven't been able to snap yet. So I look at that. I look at the kind of the quarterback that's coming in here. They're coming off of a big time win over Missouri. I think they're playing with some confidence and some momentum now. This is going to be a tough one. Like, this is not going to be, even an Alabama team with 2 losses here. They're going to be playing desperate, and they're going to be playing for their season essentially. So I'm kind of in that same boat. I think Alabama wins. I'm going to say a little bit closer. I'm going to go 35-30. I think LSU. I didn't think initially this would be a game that could get up into the 65 plus range in terms of points scored, but I do think LSU's offense will be able to punch in some scores. I think they'll be able to maybe get a turnover in this game that shortens the field for 1 score, but I just don't know if consistently this defense is going to be able to get off the field enough for Milroe and those guys not to have a good day. So I'm rolling with Alabama in this one too. And
Mm.
coming into the year, I thought LSU would split the Ole Miss Alabama games. Like I thought that was kind of the trajectory of their season, and that they would handle their business for a lot of these other conference games and finish 9-3. Well, they're sitting here with 2 losses, and they get a third. It's kind of right in line with what I had thought going into the year, and I don't know that much has changed my confidence level on that.
Maybe we're gonna be wrong.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah. Hopefully, we're wrong. I mean, like I think both of us would love to be wrong, and that we could
Yeah.
continue writing about LSU being a potential playoff team here. But it's just been a lot of concerns there from that A&M game that you hope LSU's finding some answers to.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you, and it'll be interesting to kind of monitor. Should be a fun atmosphere, and anything can happen at home in the SEC. I tweeted out, I think Saturday evening after the A&M loss to South Carolina, I was like, we're starting to see some different type of transitive property. Ole Miss comes to Tiger Stadium and loses. LSU goes to College Station and loses. College State A&M goes to South Carolina loses, but LSU went out there and won. So it's just hard to win on the road.
Yeah.
And winning on the road in the SEC is just very, very difficult. So be interesting. But thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for watching on the podcast feeds. We will have tomorrow a behind enemy lines look with our Bama 24/7 site. So make sure you check that out as well. And then we'll obviously catch back up with you late into the I'll be honest, into the hour more into the morning on Sunday with a reaction episode, and then obviously getting ready for what a lot of people hope is a road trip to Florida where you're trying to stay in the race. We'll see how that pans out as well. But he's Glen West. My name's Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, like the video. It helps us out in the algorithm and keep the numbers rolling. We appreciate you. We hit 5,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel a couple weeks ago, so we appreciate that as well.
Let's go. Let's
And
keep pushing, guys. Appreciate
keep
all
pushing.
y'all's help.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.